Okay, so today we are going to learn how to solve an ax squared plus bx plus c quadratic equation. So we can always know if a is 1 and 1x squared plus bx plus c is factorable, it will always be in this form: 1x plus d in parentheses multiplied by 1x plus e in parentheses. So if there is a coefficient of x squared, so ax squared plus bx plus c, and it is factorable, it would be fx plus d in parentheses and then gx plus e in parentheses, where e times d equals c and f times g equals a. So let's start off with one where the a is 1. So first, in all quadratics, you want to make sure it's equal to 0. So we want to subtract 36 from both sides. So subtract 36. So it'll be x plus 5 squared squared minus 36 equals 0. So you want to distribute this x plus 5 term. So we want to create a little box. So dun 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 dun. And we want it so it's x plus 5 is down here, because that's what we're multiplying, times x plus 5. And we just fill out the box. So x squared, 25, 5x, and 5x. So once we have this, we just write it out. So x squared plus 5x, that's 5, 6, plus 5x plus 25 minus 36. And just combine like terms, so x squared plus 10x plus, minus 11 equals 0. So now we just want to make a box, and we want to fill in what we already know. So we know this bottom box is going to be x squared no matter what, and this top box is going to be negative 11. So then we make a triangle right next to it, or I'm going to go below, and we take the a coefficient, or just the whole a value, and multiply by the c value. So 1x squared times negative 11 would equal negative 11 x squared. And then you just take the b value, so in this case is 10x. So we list the factors of this a, so what it has to add to this, or multiply to this and add to this. So the factors of 11, since it is a prime number, is going to be 1 and 11. And since we know one of the numbers has to be negative because it is negative 11, the two combinations we do have is negative 1 and negative 11, 1. So if you add these together, this will equal 10x, so what we need, and this will equal negative 12, which is not even close. So we will fill it in, so negative 1x and 11x. And that, again, equals negative 11x and adds to 10x. So what we want to do is we just want to fill in the box with what we know again. 11x, negative 1x. And we can just fill in the terms that satisfy this box. So x, 11 times x, 11. And then negative 1 times 11 equals a negative 11. So then we know we can just write it out. X plus 11, x minus 1. And then to go one step further, or equals 0. To go one step further, we want to solve the quadratic equation. So all you have to do is take the opposite of this d or f or e value. So it will be x equals negative 11 and x equals positive 1. So let's plug it into this equation up here, or this equation right here where it's set to 0. We want to go in parentheses x, so my bad, negative 11 plus 5 squared minus 36 will equal 0. Plug this in, negative 6 squared minus 36 will equal 0. 36 minus 36 does in fact equal 0. And we can do the same thing just with the 1 value. So all we need to do is just plug in the 1. So 1 plus 5, we can just write 6 because we know it's 6. 6 squared minus 36 equals 0. 36 minus 36 does in fact equal 0. So that's how you solve 1 with where the a value equals 1. So let's move on. So the a value is a number different than 1. So in this case 2. So what we need to do is we need to get it to 0, which we already have it equal to 0. And we do the same thing. We fill out what we know. We make that little box. We put in 2x squared because we know that's what it's going to equal, and we know 4. So now we start listing the factors. What equals 4? We know 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Well, first let's make this x real quick. And again, just multiply the a term by the c term, 8x squared, and then take that b term, 9x. So we want something that multiplies to this, but adds to this. So the only things that, oh, that's fun. Okay, so 8 and 1, 2 and 4. And since we know it's positive, it's going to be a positive combination. So something that adds to 9 is 8 and 1. So let's put in 8x and 1x. That multiplies to 8x squared, and that adds to 9x. Fill in our box again. 8x, 1x. So we know that you can take a half, but we want whole numbers here. So we know this is going to be a 1, and this is going to be x, and the only thing that satisfies this 4 is going to be a 4. And so we know this is 2x, because 2x times 4 equals 8x, 4 times 1 equals 4, x times 1 equals 1x, and then x times 2x equals 2x squared. So we know this. So how we write this is going to be just similar. 2x plus 1 and x plus 4. The only difference in between this one and the last one we just did is finding the solution. So it's the same concept for this one, so we know x does equal negative 4, and just for this one, instead of taking the negative d value, we'll take negative d over, and I believe I had it as f. So we're, in this case, it would be negative 1 over 2. So negative 1/2, so it would be a half. X equals negative 1/2. So let's plug this into this top equation. Let's go with 4 first. So negative 4, or let's quick write it out. Negative 4 squared plus 9, negative 4 plus 4. Solve this. Negative 4 squared is 16. 16 times 2 equals 32. Plus negative 36 plus 4. So we just crumple this all together, and that'll equal 0. So 32 plus negative 36, which equals negative 4 plus 4, which does in fact equal 0. So let's do the same thing with the 1/2 this time. So we go 2 negative 1/2 squared plus 9 times negative 1/2 plus 4. And it's the same concept with fractions squaring fractions. I think we all know that. So 2 times 1/4, just same thing as 1/2, plus 4.5 negative, because that negative 1/2, plus 4 will equal, well, let's think. So 1/2 plus negative 4.5 equals negative 4 plus 4 does in fact equal 0. So we know both of these solutions work. So since these are a little different, let's do another one. So 3x squared plus 14x minus 5. So these terms are a little bigger. So we do the same concept, and this is equal to 0. Same concept, make the square. Fill in what we know. You know 3x squared. And we know negative 5. So we want to make an x term, or x little thing. And we know, so a times c, negative 15x squared, bottom, 14x. So what terms multiply to negative 15x squared, but add to 14x? So let's list all the factors of 15. So 1 and 15, but we have to know 1 is negative, so we'll do -1 and then -15, 1. And then 3 and 5, I believe, is the last one. So 3 and 5, 5 and 3, just make this both negative. So we go and we add -1 plus 15, that actually does equal 14. So we know it was 14. So we know these are going to be our two things. So we know -1x and 15x. Fill in what we know again, 15x, -1x, and again, we don't like, we want whole numbers. So we know this has to stay 1, so -1, so this must be x. And then we want this as 5, because -1 times 5 does equal -5. But 5 times what equals 15x? 3x. And that's how you get this term up here. So x times 3x does equal 3x squared. So we just put this into factored form. 3x minus 1, 5 plus, my bad. X plus 5. Kind of hard reading it like this. And then we just, again, take the opposite, and like we have in this one, the negative d over f rule. So we'll just do this. Negative d is -1. So those negatives cross out, but anywho. And then over 3. So we have 1/3. So x equals 1/3. Do the same thing with this. X equals -5. So let's plug this in back. So 3 times 5 squared, -5 squared, my bad, plus 14, -5, minus 5 equals 0. So 14 times -5, let's quick do some quick math. So 0, carry the 2, 70, but negative, so we know. And then this is 25, so 75 plus the -70 minus 5 equals 0. 5 minus 5 does in fact equal 0. And let's do the same thing with the 1/3. So we go, let's find a spot right here. Okay. So we have 3 times 1/3 squared plus 14 times 1/3 minus 5. So this equals 1/9. 1/9 times 3 does equal 1/3, so we want to have 1/3 plus 14 over 1, so 14/3. And let's just convert this 5 to thirds too, so -15/3. And as you can see, I'm going to move over here. 1/3 plus 14/3 equals -15/3, or positive 15/3, my bad, minus 15/3 equals 0. So we know these solutions are. So you're probably wondering what happens if you can't factor it? Well, you do the same concept, so you want to put it equal to 0. So 0 equals 4x squared minus 6x plus 1. And this is where the quadratic formula comes in. So you want to list your a term, b term, and c term over here. So a, that does equal 4. And this is just the coefficient, not plus the x. So b equals -6, and c equals 1. Okay, so we have this. And the quadratic formula is -b. This is all in generality. -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And all we have to do is just plug in these a, b, and c terms. So -6, so 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -6 in parentheses squared, plus or minus, minus 4 times a, so 4 in this case, times c, so 1, all over 2a, so 2 times 4. This simplifies to 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 16 all over 8. Simplify what's under the radical. 6 plus or minus the square root of 20 all over 8. We want to simplify all this to as far as we can. So I'm going to move over here. And we want 6 plus or minus the 2 square root of 5 all over 8. And this is correct, but to take it one step further, we want to simplify. So we can take 2 out of everything. So it would be 2x plus or minus, or no, not x, this would be 3 plus or minus square root of 5 all over 8, or 4. And so since we know, we can just get rid of it. And we know, so x does equal 3 plus square root of 5 all over 4, and comma 3 minus square root of 5 all over 4. So this is how you find the solutions to a quadratic that does not factor. So there we go.